Hello friends and lovers, it's Haelian, and we're here with the Olympic update to go over the Altar of Ashes and the Arcana cards. A few people have asked me, like, what's your average loadout look like? What should you be using? Things like that. The truth is, this should change between every single weapon and aspect, or at least to some degree. Usually it's just one or two. But I figured we'd do like a super quick video and try to talk about it and hopefully help some people. If you got questions, let me know in the comments. If you got good loadouts that you think work well for you, let us know in the comments as well here. First, why don't we just kind of cover like a basic loadout that I'd be using most of the time here, in case you just kind of want to get to the quick and dirty of it. I got you, I feel you know what I mean? I understand you don't want to watch a 30-minute long video just to find out which cards to use here. So this is kind of an average setup I might be using most of the time here. Yes, I kind of ignore this quadrant unless it's for specific builds or weapons over here. The messenger is whatever. I kind of just have Swift Runner activated on the left here so that I can activate an entire column, so that way it activates Divinity. I do like using Strength, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but it's just completely interchangeable with the Death Defiances, so that's up to you. I've been really enjoying Strength though, so this is like probably a super standard setup that you'd see often. Origination, always on. Now, if you're going to be using something where you don't think you'll be using the attack or the special, the regulars, very often, you can turn this off, but the problem quickly becomes like, okay, where do you put 2 points then at this point, you know? I mean, if you think you're going to be using the Omega Cast, definitely shoot for Knight, even if just, you know, occasionally. It'd be nice to activate something like the Lovers here. That's a nice card to turn on. It also lets you turn on the Queen, too, this way. Now, I turned off Wayward Son in particular because this way we still have an entire active column here. Although, actually, yeah, wait a minute. You can probably do that, but the thing is, you really don't want to turn off the Sorceress, right? And you can't turn off Swift Runner either. The Sorceress is still a powerful card, even though it's not really what people liked before, or at least what a lot of people liked before. So yeah, something like these two loadouts basically here between the Lovers and or, you know, the Huntress. That's usually the big decision that I'm trying to make here. So those are the two loadouts I'd be choosing. Let's go kind of dive into the individual cards now. All right, so for individual cards, let's just start with the Sorceress. Your Omega moves are 30% faster. You should probably just have it on pretty much every single run. I know a lot of people have been devastated by the change here, where the Sorceress used to allow you to slow down time for quite a bit too, right? And they moved that to a keepsake that you'd have to have on in order to get that effect. This is still a really powerful card, but I definitely understand why you missed it. I mean, let me know, do you like this change? Do you hate this change? This is definitely probably the most vocal change that people have been against that I've heard in the recent update, so I'd love to get your feedback on it. But in the meantime, I would probably leave this on 99% of the time for just one Arcana, right? Unless you are trying to activate particular cards between the Queen and Divinity or Judgment, essentially. Next up, we got Wayward Son. I mean, it's still very strong for just one grasp. I might have called it Arcana earlier, I realized. For one grasp, I mean, I'd probably have it on the majority of time at this point. It's still, that's quite a bit. You know, 4 health, sometimes 8 health if you're desperate. Can't really blame it. The Huntress, it's a very powerful effect for just 2 grasp, but sometimes you just don't need it. You know, if you're focusing on your Omegas, there's kind of no good reason to have this on. It's a little difficult to use because you have to spend a little bit of magic when you enter a room, ideally, to get the bonus, and then you can just start spamming the attack or special, whatever the heck you're going to be going with. Like a good example of this is maybe with the Black Coat aspect of Mel. You know, you walk in, drop down an Omega cast, and then just start spamming the attack, for instance. You know what I mean? It's not going to work with your Omega attack or your Omega special, but that 50% extra damage, it feels pretty good. You know what I mean? Next up, we have the Knight. I don't usually have this on unless I'm doing a cast build, I'm planning a cast build, or I'm using an aspect that works really well with it. Namely, aspect of Charon, of course, where you get a major incentive to use your cast. Yes, even though you're dropping your regular cast here, this counts as Omega cast damage when you explode it with your Omega special. Therefore, you will get the damage bonus from the Knight. So, incredibly strong, works well with aspect of Persephone. I kind of like the Omega cast. I might end up using this a little bit more often. Maybe that becomes the interchangeable with Huntress sometimes. I don't know. We'll have to see how we feel. The Moon, your Hex also charges up automatically as though you used 3 magic every 1 second. I don't think about this card, to be honest. I mean, Hexes are actually in a decent place right now where I do think about them. I do want to get them in a run, just not usually super quickly, you know what I mean? So if this is on, it's great. If it's not on, it's not like I'm going to avoid hexes, I think, most of the time. I don't think this really influences how I choose my hexes at all, basically. So, in other words, I wouldn't necessarily build around that 100%. The Furies, you deal 30% more damage to foes in your cast. Should be on pretty much 100% of the time, honestly. For 2 Grasp, I think it's just very worth it. Not much to think about there. The Titan, you have plus 40 health, plus 40 magic. Should be on almost 100% of the time, I think, for almost any run. I think it's just very worth it for 2 Grasp, no question. The Messenger, you have plus 5% dodge. I mean, for 1 Grasp, this one's on the cusp, you know what I mean? So if you turn this off, you might find yourself turning that on just because you got to spend it somewhere, right? You might wind up with awkward amounts where you turn this on, but it's never a priority for me. This winds up being whenever I have a little bit of overflow and I just have 1 or 2 Grasp left. It's like, I guess I'm turning on the Messenger. For me, it's never a priority to turn it on. The Unseen restores 6 magic every 1 second. I never bother with this card unless I'm doing like a really silly run where it seems very necessary. I don't think I've ever turned this on as a particular strategy just to win a random run, no matter what the fear. It's just too expensive, is the bottom line. Usually 1 magic regen boon will cover it. And I think if the question is, what would you rather sacrifice, 5 Arcana or 1 boon in a run? My answer is going to be the 1 boon. And it's usually going to be more powerful than the magic that you see here as well. Death, you have plus 15% chance to deal critical damage with each move in a Omega combo. So you have to do, what's the term here? You can't do the same Omega move in a row. You'd have to swap between doing the Omega attack, do Omega special, do the Omega cast, or just back and forth one by one. This is a card I almost never have on, even though I think it's okay, but only in the instance where you know you're gonna do that. The best aspect I can think of for this is aspect of Momus, where you get rewarded quite well for using a variety of Omega moves. So you can do your Omega attack and then Omega cast, for instance, and they keep triggering over there. It works really well there, but when I think about it, I don't know if there's really any other aspect where I'd bother with it, but maybe there's 1 or 2 others. But yeah, not usually worth it, I think. Swift Runner, your sprint is 10% faster, so they changed this one in case you don't know, where your dash is innately faster and you no longer need the card. So this card is definitely not worth 1 Grasp for pretty much anyone, you know what I mean? So if you can afford to drop it, then go ahead. In fact, actually, yeah, in this instance, I should probably have the Messenger on. It's just not totally worth it. But I think I was doing speedruns or something like that, so I left it on. Yeah, you should probably just swap that out for this. As long as you're activating the row or column, I guess, for Divinity or Released if that's your current goal, there's really no reason to have this on. Yeah, the only reason you'd have this on, I think, is A, speedrun, B, try and activate one of these wonky cards like the Queen or Divinity here. Or, again, Overflow Arcana or something like that. Death Defiances, I mean, they made it a lot more interesting now, the Death Defiance card, because now it is essentially interchangeable between strength. Oh, that's why I had this on. Okay, hold on. That's why I had that on, because I was using strength. Okay, it was, or maybe it was both, I don't know. So they made this really interesting, and I guess we'll talk about strength when we get there, but I think generally you probably just want Eternity on, or rather the Death Defiances. I still think it is the better build if you're just looking to get a win. I think strength offers some really interesting alternatives there, but I would still imagine that the Death Defiances are just going to be way safer. Now, I'm saying I imagine because the truth is, this is going to take a lot of playtime to truly determine what I think is best here, but my inkling is that the Death Defiances are really cool. Even with Athena's new keepsake, which can guarantee you seeing her in a run, you have to lose. If you lose, let's say you lose all 3 Death Defiances by the time you beat Eris. It's like, oh man, you're down bad, you know? Or maybe you just lost 2 out of the 3. You're down bad. You can take Athena's keepsake and have her refill all those Death Defiances, basically, even before, or rather, yeah, so I have to think of this for instance here. If you lose all 3 Death Defiances, that's when Athena can appear via her keepsake, and then you can have her refill all those Death Defiances, and she'll act like Patroclus, essentially. Even if you only lost 2 out of 3, and you're entering, say, Olympus, right? You could lose the 3rd one, possibly even on purpose, while wearing her keepsake, and then you'll see her soon afterwards, hopefully. You know, it's pretty much guaranteed. And then she will refill them all, potentially, either. She only has 6, 7, 8 boons or something like that. So even if she doesn't offer them right away, you can re-roll her boons and just specifically get them. So in other words, Death Defiance is still really strong, but I like that they gave us an alternative here. The Centaur, you gain +5 health and +5 magic whenever you pass through locations. I would strive to always have this on. It's pretty easy. I mean, would you miss it? Yeah, you probably miss it if you don't have it on. It's just super easy to turn on. I don't think you really got to think about it. It's the truth. It's very rare that you would not have to have this on just naturally, truth be told. Origination, you deal +50% damage to foes with at least 2 curses from different Olympians. I think you should always have it on. I do think. Maybe there's like rare instances. I mean, if you want to goof around, sure. If you are planning a Poseidon-centric build, coupled with Hephaestus, maybe I could see, like, okay, I'm gonna go turn off Origination because those 2 gods are kind of just hard to get their curses from. But truth is, it's pretty easy to activate 2 curses when you think about it, when you think about your decisions and you plan a little bit ahead here. You know, like you can utilize the cast and the dash in order to make sure that you apply 2 curses. I think you should pretty much always have it on. The levers, you take 0 damage the first 3 times you are hit in Guardian encounters. This is actually a very strong grasp, and it kind of just depends on a few things. Like, you could turn these 2 off to turn on the levers, and even if you are doing a build where you use your attack and special a lot, I don't think it's wrong. It's pretty interchangeable. It depends how confident you are, I guess. I think this is pretty good. It got a little less good with some of the oath changes, but that's for another video. It's just not as important now, I would argue, but it's a pretty strong card that you should think about having, especially if you're doing higher amounts of fear, 16, 32, or something like that. Definitely think about it. Think about swapping some of that damage, I guess you could say, in for it. The Fates, you have +3 rerolls and can alter location rewards. So the truth is, if I do a run, I pretty much have these 4 on all the time. I would mostly recommend it, especially the Fates and the Champions. We don't have to go over them very much. It's just, rerolls are just incredibly powerful in this game. Now, you do have to get to know the boons. You have to know what they do. You have to know which ones work well for your particular weapon or aspect in order to make really good use of the rerolls, but they're still incredibly powerful. And the sooner you get used to having them and using them well, the better you are going to be at the game, I think. Moving on to the Boatman, this one's a little bit more questionable. I mean, you lose the rerolls from the Seer if you turn off Boatman, but it is 5. It is 5. I've done runs where I'll do something like, say, I'll turn on the lovers. I don't know, maybe I turn on the knight. Probably not the knight, you know, but something like that, just to get the lovers on and keep the huntress on. I've definitely done runs like that, especially when you do higher fear where things cost more money. Plus 300 gold just isn't that powerful at that point. But in a casual run without a lot of fear, 300 gold is a lot. It is a lot of money, and plus you get more reroll. So for most runs, I do have it on, I would say. Artificer, you have 3 chances this night to turn any minor find into a random major find. So you use the convert button for if you find Ash or Psyche, for instance, and you can turn it into a completely random major find. Could be health, could be a palm, could be money, could be a hammer, even. If you haven't already gotten too many hammers, is the easiest way for me to explain it. Powerful effect, super RNG. Could be a boon too, by the way. It's a fun one. So if you're comfortable in your build/run that you're setting out to do, it's a fun one to have on. Is it good? It's arguable. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's a little bit worse on the surface because you never get, or you extremely rarely get, minor finds on the surface. You cannot get a chamber reward specifically for a minor find on the surface. You'd have to go into one of those like subsequent chambers in a major chambers, best way I can describe it. And even then, you don't know if you're going to get a minor find or not. You just might. So you have to wait until the second zone in the surface to potentially get a minor find. Even then, they're not common. Like, minor finds are not common in the second zone even. So it's actually just hard to use Artificer on the surface. So I generally wouldn't recommend it on the surface. Underworld, it's pretty solid though. Excellence, any boons you're offered have plus 50% chance to be improved to rare. I'm going to be honest, I never use it. Never, ever, ever. I just don't think it's worth 5. I mean, alternatively, Divinity, I think, is typically worth it. The bottom line, it's not worth 5, you know? The difference between common and rare boons just isn't enough to sacrifice 5 Arcana, even if it's a 50% chance. So I never bother with it. I couldn't tell you the last time I had it on, so this is probably the easiest no for me, I gotta say. The Queen, any boons you're offered have plus 10% chance to be a duo. This one's quite hard to activate. You know what I mean? Activate no more than 2 cards that use the same amount of grasp. It's actually quite difficult to activate, so you'd have to think pretty hard about it. You might get it naturally, see, with the lever setup that we have going on here. Do I strive to keep this on even if I have a run where I'm seeking duo boons? Not usually, no. So I guess if the question is it worth going out of your way to make sure you have the Queen on? I'm still on the fence about it, truth be told. I don't know. Let me know what you think, because I can kind of go either way with it. Take it or leave it. I don't think I usually go out of my way for it. It's just not totally worth it, I think. The Seer, we kind of covered. Don't really got to talk about it. The Champions, I think you should always have it on. Don't really got to talk about it either there. Strength, so this one is the interesting one. If you have no Death Defiance effects, you take negative 50% damage and deal 25% more. So, you can turn off your Death Defiances and just have Strength on instead. I don't think you'd want to run both ever, really. I mean, not realistically, but maybe that could change, you know? Still pretty early on in the patch cycle, so who knows here. I think it's a really cool alternative. I think it actually works well, too. It's comparable to the Death Defiances. It's not strictly worse than having the Death Defiances. It makes things really interesting. Also allows you to use Athena's Keepsake, which is really, really powerful. You can get a powerful effect like Divine Dash in like Chamber 2 of a run, which is important, you know what I mean? It makes your health more important, like the max health upgrades are more effective. It makes other reduced damage effects more powerful, like Flood Control or what is it, Brave Face and things like that. I mean, it's really cool, basically, is what I'm saying. And I've been running it a lot just because I think it makes runs more interesting almost that way. It makes things a little more, I don't know, climactic maybe, especially since the major downside to this is the instant kills that we can affect, namely from the Chronos fight, because even at half damage, you're going to take 500 if you get hit by Chronos's big flash. And the flame move from Prometheus has a really, really high base damage too. I think it might be like 250 or something crazy. So I'm not positive about that, so that means you'd be taking 125. Oh, it's going to be brutal. It's going to be brutal. But again, I don't know. There's something about it that makes it more fun, or maybe it's just because it's different that I like it. So I recommend trying it out at the least. Divinity. Any boons you're offered have plus 20% chance to be improved to Epic. This is one I tend to have on most of the time, I would say. I like it. I would say. I tried pretty hard to have it on. And it's not too bad to get everything in a column or row active. Although you do have to plan around it. It does mean that I'm typically avoiding certain things in order to make sure I have this on. And I'm not really picking everything that I want, but I often consider it worth it. Now, why is this worth it over Excellence? Well, because this doesn't really cost Arcana per se, you know what I mean? Usually you're just sacrificing like 1 or 2 Arcana versus Excellence, which you are sacrificing 5 for, you know what I mean? I think that's the big difference there for me. And Judgment, the silly one, you activate 5 random inactive Arcana cards when you vanquish a Guardian. Activate no more than 3 cards. I mean, this is a fun Arcana. I wouldn't describe it as good, though. I mean, I don't think there's, in the current setup, that this is going to be better than running, you know, just a normal setup here. But it's fun. It's fun to turn on and just have a laugh with. I think the whole slowly snowballing into a build with a lot of good things by the end of the run is just not great. Like, we're already trying to do that with boons, but then you try to do it with Arcana too, and it's rough. Usually you have like a pretty rough time, I think, there. But I'm still glad it's here. It's just not one that you'll probably see me use very often, is the truth. All right, that was a lot of talking, but I hope this helped some people out there. If you got questions, if you got comments, let me know. I'm be happy to hear it. I'll be happy to try to answer your questions best that I can, too. And my opinions might change over time. Not to mention they might change some things, of course, in the game, too. But yeah, things shift over time, metas change, and a lot of times I do take pointers from people in the high fear or speedrun community. Sometimes they might convince me that I'm wrong about some things. So let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. And I'll see you in another video.